Most people think they know the difference between romance and lust. They think lust is physical and romance is emotional, but the truth is much deeper and far more uncomfortable. Lust is fast, it's loud, it demands attention. Romance is slower, it watches, it waits. Lust enters your body first. It lights up your senses, pulls you into the moment, and makes everything feel urgent. Your brain floods with dopamine, narrowing your focus until the only thing that matters is how good it feels right now. There is no future in lust, only hunger. Romance, on the other hand, enters your nervous system. It doesn't rush you. It settles into you. It grows through presence, curiosity, and emotional safety. Romance isn't obsessed with consumption, it's interested in connection. This is why lust often feels intense but shallow. It thrives on novelty, fantasy, and distance. The moment reality shows up, flaws, boundaries, emotional needs, lust loses interest. It was never built to handle depth. Romance can survive reality because romance is built on seeing someone, not just wanting them. Lust asks, how do you make me feel? Romance asks, who are you when no one's performing? This is also why lust feels empowering at first, but empty later. The body gets stimulation, but the nervous system stays hungry. Romance does the opposite. It might feel quiet at first, but over time it creates fullness, safety, and emotional grounding. Many people confuse lust for romance because lust feels dramatic, romance feels subtle. And in a world addicted to intensity, subtlety gets overlooked. But here's the truth most people avoid. Lust wants possession, romance wants presence. Lust is about taking, romance is about choosing. And when you learn to tell the difference, you stop chasing excitement that disappears and start building connection that lasts. 5 key points of the speech. Lust is driven by urgency, romance is built through presence. Lust demands immediacy, romance grows with time and attention. Lust focuses on sensation, romance focuses on connection. One stimulates the body, the other regulates the nervous system. Lust thrives on fantasy, romance survives reality. Romance doesn't disappear when imperfections appear. Lust seeks possession, romance seeks understanding. Lust wants access, romance wants to know and be known. Lust fades when novelty ends. Romance deepens with safety. What lasts isn't intensity, it's emotional grounding. A lust is driven by urgency. Romance is built through presence. Lust moves fast. It doesn't ask permission and it doesn't wait for understanding. The moment it appears, it creates urgency, a feeling that something must happen now. Your body reacts before your mind has time to evaluate. The pulse quickens, attention narrows, and everything else fades into the background. This urgency isn't emotional depth, it's biological activation. Lust is powered by desire that seeks immediate relief. It wants closeness without context, intensity without investment. That's why lust often feels overwhelming at first. It bypasses reflection. The brain is focused on sensation, not meaning. In this state, curiosity about the other person is limited to how they stimulate you, not who they are beneath the surface. Romance unfolds differently. Romance doesn't rush you toward an outcome, it pulls you into presence. Presence means being emotionally available in the moment without needing to consume it. Romance allows space for conversation, silence, curiosity, and gradual emotional exposure. It doesn't collapse time, it expands it. Where lust asks for immediacy, romance allows unfolding. Romance grows when two people feel safe enough to slow down. Instead of urgency, there's attention. Instead of hunger, there's interest. Romance isn't in a hurry because it's not afraid of losing the moment. It's invested in understanding it. Urgency creates pressure. Presence creates choice. This is one of the clearest ways to tell the difference between lust and romance. When urgency dominates, boundaries feel like obstacles. Delays feel frustrating. Distance feels intolerable. The connection becomes about access. In romance, boundaries don't threaten the bond, they deepen it. Time apart doesn't create panic, it creates reflection. The connection is not dependent on constant stimulation. Urgency also tends to collapse discernment. When lust is leading, red flags get ignored because the body wants satisfaction. The nervous system is activated, not regulated. Romance, by contrast, invites regulation. You notice how the person treats you, how you feel around them over time, and whether emotional safety is growing. This is why lust burns bright but burns out. Urgency can't sustain itself. Once the initial charge fades, there's nothing underneath to hold the connection. Romance, built through presence, doesn't need constant excitement. It survives quiet moments because quiet is where depth forms. Many people struggle to recognize romance because it doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't create chaos. It asks for patience, and patience feels unfamiliar in a culture trained to chase intensity. But presence is where real connection lives. Presence allows two people to actually see each other, not just react to each other. It creates space for trust, emotional attunement, and choice. Lust says, I want you now. Romance says, I'm here with you. And the difference between those two statements determines whether a connection fades quickly or grows into something real. Lust focuses on sensation. Romance focuses on connection. Lust is rooted in sensation. It's about how something feels in the body, the spark, the heat, the physical response that pulls you toward another person. In lust, attention is narrowed to stimulation. Touch, appearance, voice, proximity, these become the center of the experience. The body leads and the mind follows. This isn't wrong or shallow by default. Sensation is powerful. It's how attraction begins. But sensation alone doesn't ask deeper questions. Lust is satisfied by intensity, not understanding. It wants more feeling, more stimulation, more reaction. Once the sensation peaks and fades, lust looks for the next surge. Romance operates on a different level. Romance isn't driven by how intensely something feels. It's driven by how connected you feel. Connection involves emotional attunement, mutual presence, and the sense that you are seen and responded to as a whole person, not just a body. Where lust asks, do you excite me? Romance asks, do you understand me? Sensation is momentary, connection is cumulative. Sensation lives in isolated moments, a glance, a touch, a spark. Connection builds over time through shared experiences, emotional honesty, and responsiveness. It's not loud at first. It grows quietly as trust develops. This difference explains why lust can feel thrilling but empty afterward. The body is satisfied, but the nervous system remains unmet. There's no sense of being emotionally held. Romance fills that gap. It creates a feeling of emotional continuity, the sense that the bond exists beyond the moment. Lust also tends to objectify, even unintentionally. When sensation is the focus, the other person becomes a source of feeling rather than a subject with inner depth. This doesn't mean disrespect is intended. It means attention is oriented toward experience rather than relationship. Romance shifts that orientation. In romance, you become curious about the other person's inner world, their thoughts, fears, values, and emotional rhythms. You listen not to respond, but to understand. The bond becomes relational, not transactional. Another key difference lies in regulation. Sensation excites the nervous system. Connection regulates it. Lust often leaves the body activated, restless, wanting more. Romance brings calm alongside desire. You can feel attracted and at ease at the same time. This is why people often mistake lust for love. Intensity is easy to recognize. Connection is subtle. And in a culture that glorifies stimulation, subtlety is overlooked. But when the stimulation fades, as it always does, connection is what remains. Without it, relationships collapse. With it, intimacy deepens. Romance doesn't eliminate desire. It grounds it. Desire becomes part of a larger emotional landscape rather than the entire focus. Attraction feels safer, warmer, and more sustainable. Lust says, feel this. Romance says, feel with me. And that shift from sensation to connection is what transforms attraction into something that can actually last. Lust thrives on fantasy. Romance survives reality. Lust lives in imagination. It feeds on what could be, not what is. In lust, the mind fills in the gaps with idealized images, projected traits, and imagined futures. You're not responding to the whole person. You're responding to a version of them created by desire. That version is polished, effortless, and free of contradiction. Fantasy is powerful because it protects lust from reality. There are no disappointments in fantasy, no conflicts, no needs, no emotional responsibility. The person exists primarily as a stimulus, not a complex human being. And as long as reality stays at a distance, lust can remain intense. Romance can't survive on fantasy. It requires contact with the real person, their habits, moods, flaws, boundaries, and emotional patterns. Romance begins where fantasy ends. It grows not from perfection, but from tolerance and curiosity toward imperfection. This is why lust often collapses the moment reality shows up. When someone expresses emotional needs, sets boundaries, or reveals vulnerability, lust can lose interest. Reality interrupts the fantasy, and without fantasy, lust has nothing to stand on. Romance responds differently. Romance doesn't disappear when the illusion breaks, it adapts. It makes room for complexity. Instead of asking, does this ruin the feeling? Romance asks, can I understand this? Fantasy keeps people at a distance. Reality brings them closer. Romance chooses closeness even when it's inconvenient. Another way to see the difference is in expectations. Lust expects someone to perform, to stay attractive, exciting, and stimulating. Romance expects authenticity. It allows people to be tired, unsure, imperfect, and still worthy of affection. Fantasy also resists time. Lust wants moments frozen at their peak. Romance accepts change. As people evolve, romance evolves with them. It doesn't require someone to remain the same version they were at the beginning. This is why lust often feels strongest in early stages or limited contexts. Short encounters, secrecy, and distance preserve fantasy. Long-term closeness reveals reality, and only romance can survive that exposure. Romance doesn't deny desire. It integrates it with understanding. It replaces projection with presence. You're not loving an image, you're loving a person. Many people fear this transition. Reality feels riskier than fantasy because it requires vulnerability. To see someone clearly and be seen clearly means letting go of control. Fantasy keeps power in your hands. Romance shares it, but this is also where meaning enters. What survives reality has weight. What collapses under it was never built to last. Lust says, stay as I imagine you. Romance says, show me who you really are. And the willingness to meet reality, not avoid it, is what separates fleeting desire from lasting connection. Lust seeks possession. Romance seeks understanding. At its core, lust is about possession. It wants access to a body, to attention, to validation, to pleasure. This doesn't always look aggressive or selfish on the surface. Often, it hides behind charm, intensity, or obsession. But the underlying question of lust is simple. How do I get what I want from you? Lust measures connection by availability, how quickly you respond, how close you are, how much of yourself you give. When access is restricted, frustration appears. Boundaries feel like rejection. Independence feels like distance. Possession requires control, and anything that limits control feels threatening. Romance operates from a completely different place. Romance isn't focused on access, it's focused on understanding. It wants to know your inner world, not just reach your body. Romance asks questions, listens without rushing, and pays attention to emotional nuance. It doesn't collapse the other person into a role. It allows them to remain a full, separate human being. This difference becomes clear when desire isn't immediately satisfied. In lust, delay creates tension. In romance, delay creates depth. Romance doesn't panic when it can't have everything at once. It values consent, timing, and emotional readiness because understanding matters more than consumption. Possession reduces a person to what they provide. Understanding expands them into who they are. This is why lust often struggles with emotional boundaries. When someone says no, needs space, or expresses discomfort, lust experiences it as loss. Romance experiences it as information. Instead of pushing harder, romance adjusts. It wants to remain connected without overriding the other person's autonomy. Romance also allows disagreement. Lust prefers compliance. In lust, harmony is maintained by performance, staying attractive, agreeable, desirable. In romance, harmony is built through honesty. You don't have to be perfect to be valued. You just have to be real. Another key difference is how each responds to change. Lust wants you to remain the version it desired. Romance wants to understand who you are becoming. Growth doesn't threaten romance, it deepens it. Possession is fragile because it's based on fear of loss. Understanding is resilient because it's based on acceptance. Lust holds tightly. Romance holds gently. This doesn't mean romance lacks desire. Desire still exists, but it's not controlling the bond. Attraction becomes an expression of connection, not a demand for ownership. Many people confuse intensity with care, but wanting someone intensely is not the same as knowing them deeply. One is about need. The other is about presence. Lust says, "You're mine." Romance says, "I see you." And being seen without being claimed, pressured, or reduced is where real intimacy begins. Lust fades when novelty ends. Romance deepens with safety. Lust is fueled by novelty. Newness sharpens attention, heightens sensation, and keeps the nervous system alert. The unfamiliar triggers excitement because the brain is wired to notice what is different. This is why lust often appears suddenly and intensely. Everything feels fresh, charged, and unpredictable, but novelty is temporary. The brain adapts quickly. What once felt thrilling becomes familiar. And when novelty fades, lust often fades with it. This doesn't mean anything went wrong. It means lust has reached its natural limit. Lust isn't built for continuity. It's built for stimulation. Romance responds differently to familiarity. Romance doesn't rely on novelty to stay alive. It relies on safety. Safety allows the nervous system to relax, which creates space for emotional depth. As predictability increases, trust grows. And as trust grows, intimacy deepens. This is why romance often feels quieter over time, but also more meaningful. The absence of constant stimulation isn't emptiness, it's stability. In romance, familiarity becomes comforting rather than dull. Knowing someone's patterns doesn't kill desire, it transforms it. Safety allows vulnerability. When you feel emotionally safe, you can show parts of yourself that are guarded in lust, fear, insecurity, uncertainty, tenderness. These moments don't create excitement in the traditional sense, but they create closeness. And closeness is what sustains long-term connection. Lust struggles with safety because safety removes tension. And tension is what keeps lust alive. Once the unknown disappears, lust loses its fuel. Romance, however, begins to thrive. It doesn't need suspense to stay engaged. It needs reliability, presence, and mutual care. This is where many people get confused. They assume that when intensity drops, love is gone. In reality, intensity was never love, it was stimulation. Romance doesn't disappear when things calm down. It shows up more clearly. Romance also allows desire to evolve. Instead of chasing constant highs, attraction becomes layered. There's warmth, affection, emotional closeness, and physical desire woven together. Desire becomes less urgent but more enduring. Safety also creates choice. You're not driven by fear of loss or need for validation. You stay because you want to, not because you're afraid to leave. That choice strengthens the bond. Lust asks for excitement. Romance offers belonging. Lust fades when there's nothing new to chase. Romance deepens when there's someone safe to return to. And in the long run, what nourishes the heart isn't endless novelty. It's the feeling of being emotionally at home with another person. Give me conclusion of speech into 5-long paragraph. Also give me thank you and goodbye notes. Conclusion of the speech, romance as lust. When you truly understand the difference between romance and lust, you stop being confused by your own feelings. Lust explains the rush, the urgency, and the obsession. Romance explains the calm, the depth, and the sense of being emotionally grounded. One excites the body, the other stabilizes the nervous system. Neither is wrong, but only one is built to last. Lust teaches us what we want to feel. Romance teaches us who we want to be with. Lust thrives on novelty, fantasy, and sensation, but collapses when reality and familiarity appear. Romance grows in those very moments. It doesn't disappear. When intensity fades, it reveals itself more clearly when safety replaces suspense. Many people chase lust thinking it is love because intensity is easy to recognize and calmness is misunderstood. But love is not chaos, and connection is not anxiety. Romance doesn't demand constant excitement. It offers consistency, understanding, and emotional presence. What feels boring at first is often what becomes deeply fulfilling over time. When you choose romance, you choose understanding over possession, presence over performance, and safety over stimulation. You allow yourself to be seen as you are, not as you are imagined. Romance doesn't need perfection, it needs honesty. And that honesty creates a bond that doesn't collapse under pressure. In the end, lust may start the story, but romance is what allows it to continue. Lust asks for immediacy, romance asks for intention. Lust fades when novelty ends. Romance deepens when trust begins. And when you learn to recognize the difference, you stop chasing what excites you briefly and start building what can hold you for a lifetime. Thank you and goodbye notes. Thank you for taking the time to listen and reflect. If this helped you understand your emotions or relationships even a little more, then it has done its job. Remember, awareness changes how you love. Until next time, take care of your heart, your mind, and the connections you choose. Thank you and goodbye.